We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday by the time you hear this. We're recording this on Wednesday night, and we've got a pretty good show tonight or today, whenever you're listening. I've got two guests, not one, two guests. I don't always do this, but it's kind of nice sometimes to get insight from a couple of folks and a couple of favorites that have been on the podcast. We have Old Soul and we have Eric. I'm excited about how this show will go. I'm also excited by the fact that I'm going to have to work even less than I normally do. So this is a fucking win for everybody. Old Soul, thanks for joining us. It's been a while since you've been on because you're out tramping the world, protesting and doing all kinds of things. But you're back at home now.
Yeah, I think the last time I talked to you was when we got back from South Africa, and I haven't talked to you since then. But that wasn't anything like, I guess you can say politics was tied up into that. But a lot of these companies are getting advance notices that ICE is going to be coming to their businesses. And so my honey, his employer got a notice. And so they were trying to get them all ready to work from home. And so while they were doing that, they were paying for them to go to their native countries for a week off for vacation and then come back. And so they paid for us to go. Part of it was a tax write-off because they put like goods and different stuff on the company plane with us when they sent us over there. And then it was pretty cool. You got like the videos of like that big welcome that we got.
Yeah.
It was kind of like some kind of like heroes welcome or something. And I never pay attention to this, but typically when like celebrities, when they like do those meet and greets, it's like, okay, whatever. But we literally had to like stand there and like shake hands, hug, talk to everybody in like the village or whatever as like part of like the welcoming part going in there. And he was like, if your feet hurt and you get tired, you can sit down. And I'm like, no, you're not supposed to date an American anyway. So I'm gonna tough it up and get through this. But yeah, it was pretty cool. And then after that, we took Kelsey to Germany so that, she can get all settled in for her courses and stuff. And then we came back home.
I'm sure Kelsey hated the attention in South Africa.
But we didn't take her to his home village, but
Okay.
his mother and his brother and him, they came back to the resort that we were staying at, and they stayed with us for that week after we left the small village. But we ended up taking the girls with us, like his biological daughters with us, but my daughter and Kelsey, they stayed back. And I understand like I'm the only mother figure that is in America. And the youngest one, she doesn't really remember her mother like that. So I'm like the only person she knows. But I had no idea how attached she was until she like flipped out one time because we were like, okay, your mom's gonna babysit you guys. We're gonna go hang out with his friends and we'll be back. And she was not having it at all. She threw
Wow.
a whole fit. But we ended up like working it out. So we're like, we'll go to a kid friendly place. We'll bring your friends' kids. We'll bring the girls and their moms so that, they can spend time with her and feel comfortable. The oldest one, she was cool. But the youngest one, she wasn't having it. She was like, nope, I'm not leaving. And I just started doing little things like every time I sat down, I sat next to her mom and then like have her mom like engage and talk with her like that because she just like, I would move and her eyes would be like on me, like, don't you leave me here. So
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to, um, I just felt bad. And I remember texting you, I felt so bad, like being their mom and having to send them to another country because you think that's what's best for them. But now you have this whole new set of worries because of this administration and you don't know if anything is going to happen to them while they're here. But I feel so bad for her. I still do. I feel so, so bad for her. It's crazy. Oof.
Well, Eric,
So
Eric, what's up with you? It's been a little while since we've talked to you. We happened to get both of you together. You've obviously been busy doing TikToks and living your life and working all on top of it. I give you a lot of credit. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, keeping up with the news while trying to still hold down a job and then produce content on top of it sometimes does get a little exhausting. It's like, okay, when can I record? And then a whole bunch of crazy shit happens. And I've already got videos done for the day or some done for the day. Then I got to find time later in the day to record even more. And then do I put them up for today or do I go ahead and just start doing them? Well, yesterday this happened and set them ahead for tomorrow. It gets a little daunting, especially with this administration. There is always something going on. Even when there's nothing going on, we think Donald Trump may have kicked the bucket. There was stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about the big story yesterday.
Wait, I
Actually,
have a
today.
question. Don't let me
Yeah.
forget. So
Oh,
we went to DC because we're keeping the kids home right now.
mhm.
Virtual and homeschooling, so we're just doing virtual. But we took our first field trip. We went to DC, and when I told the kids that I was going to be with Eric on the podcast tonight, they had a question. So here's their question. I don't want to forget
For
it.
Eric. For
So
Eric, right?
for Eric, yeah. So there's two ways that you can that a president is like no longer the president. The first one is impeached in the House, convicted and kicked out in the Senate. That's the first way. The second way is if they croak, right? But a lot of people keep talking about the Fifth Amendment. So when they were doing their
25th.
studies, the 25th Amendment, they were doing their studies, and I thought this that hey, if they do the 25th Amendment, JD is in there and it's all good. But apparently, that's not how it works. The 25th Amendment, JD Vance steps up as acting president, right? And Donald Trump can. I don't know how that works, but he can actually come back and say, okay, I'm fit now. So, like, let's say if he has some kind of cognitive issue or something, I don't know. And they invoked the 25th Amendment. JD would be acting, right? And Donald Trump would still be technically the president. And he can come back in front of Congress and he could say, I'm good now. Can you reinstate me and put JD back in his slot? And they were trying to see how that would work if they could do an indefinite 25th Amendment, or would they have to 25th Amendment him and then impeach him behind that to get rid of him, because apparently the 25th Amendment doesn't do that. Or someone else asked, would they weaponize that? Would they do that to kind of like, I guess, keep the base calm, say, hey, he's having health issues right now. We'll do the 25th Amendment, let JD step up. Trump is still president. And once he's feeling better, then he'll take back over. And maybe that would be a way of getting rid of Trump, but keeping the base from flipping out.
Well,
That was
Eric, why don't
their
you give us a rundown?
question.
Give us a
I
rundown
didn't
on
even
what you
know the
Okay.
think about that.
25th like that, but
Okay.
apparently that's
Um, Now the way I understand the 25th Amendment working, you got quite a bit of it there. Uh, it starts with either the president themselves or the vice president with the cabinet sending a letter to the majority leader of the Senate and the Speaker of the House saying president's unfit to serve. Now, sometimes it's temporary. For example, Joe Biden did it when he was president, said, hey, I'm not going to be fit to serve for 12 hours after anesthesia for a colonoscopy. Okay.
Right.
mm-hmm.
Kamala is going to step up during that window. She had the powers of the president. If a bill needed signed, she could have signed it. If something needed to be done, she could have done it. Now, JD Vance could do the same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump had a medical episode, say he's in a coma. Doctors think he might be out for a week. He sends a letter to Congress saying, with consent of the cabinet, we know this is the issue with Donald Trump. We think he's going to be out for a week. I need control. Congress still has to vote on it. Now, if the president themselves sends the letter, typically Congress just rubber stamps it because, like with Joe Biden, known issue, 12 hours out or whatever, however many it was for the colonoscopy, it's done. He's back in charge. Nothing happens. With like if Donald Trump had a stroke and he was in a coma or whatever, they would have to hold a vote. I believe it takes 2/3 of both chambers of Congress to approve it. And then after the time frame listed by the president or the vice president and the cabinet, there would have to be another letter sent saying the president is still out. We think it might be this long. They would have to hold another vote. They could do it indefinitely with continual votes. But at any point, even in the middle of that, if Donald Trump woke up and wanted to come back, He could send a letter, go before Congress. They would hold a vote, and if 2/3 of both chambers said, "Yeah, we see you're back, you're cognitive, you're back in charge," okay, here you go. You're back being president. But if they had enough proof to back it up, and JD Vance could go to Congress again with a letter saying, "Hey, Donald Trump had a stroke. He had percentage of brain loss, et cetera. The doctors say he may make a recovery, but he will not be cognitive enough to run the country. We need to remove him for his own health, et cetera, and the health of the nation going forward." They can hold a vote and make it permanent.
Okay.
But he has to sway 2/3 of both chambers of Congress. Now, Republicans don't control 2/3 of either chamber, let alone both. They would need Democrats. So, and
Which they would
Democrats don't have 2/3. So they would have to be on good footing to use the 25th Amendment like that. But yes, they can make it permanent with the 25th. And if they've already voted and removed him permanently with the 25th, as far as I understand it, and I could be wrong, I don't think there's a way that he can go back and say, "Okay, I'm better now, reinstate me." I don't think they can if they have agreed that he is too far gone and they went with the permanent side of the 25th Amendment.
And the only way to do that would be through Donald Trump sending a letter and then Congress having to vote on it again if he keeps trying to come back and say, "I'm good." I guess that would be my main question. And then my second question is, do you think this is something, and I know the one kid that's going to ask this, is this something that you could see Republicans working with Democrats behind Trump's back to do?
Um, well, they're going to need Democrats regardless. They don't have the votes to do it alone. Now, whether or not it's behind Trump's back, I don't know. Um, I think they are hesitant to pull the 25th, obviously, because right now Donald Trump is the face of the party.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they pull it, their shot at the midterms is done. Now, if he gets bad enough where they feel like they don't have a chance and it's going to affect them politically by continuing to leave him in there and not acting, maybe they get around to doing it. Whether or not they're working with Democrats behind closed doors is anybody's guess. And it could be something where we're seeing a lot of members of like the House uh, stepping up, and even some senators saying, "I'm not running next term." Prime example, Joni Ernst here in Iowa, Republican. Now,
Mm-hmm.
she screwed her own career over by saying, when asked about Medicaid cuts, saying, "Well, we're all going to die anyway." And I think she made the decision not to run in part because she didn't think she would get reelected. But since she doesn't have a political future right now and she's not on the ballot in 26, there's no jeopardy for her if she were to vote against Donald Trump, say in an impeachment or a 25th Amendment vote, something like that.
Yeah.
That is something we need to start watching a little bit, is the number of Republicans that are saying, "I'm not running."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that may change that math for us because they don't have any jeopardy. There's nothing to affect them. Maybe they stay out of the limelight for 6 years and they rehabilitate their image for a little bit.
Don't you think that if there was a situation where the Republicans and Democrats were going behind Donald Trump's back, and that's conceivable, I don't know if it is happening, but it's conceivable. If they were going to do that, they'd just go for the all-out impeachment because they don't gain anything by just going with the 25th Amendment. If they want him out, they're going to want to get him out permanently. And theoretically, they could. The Democrats would have enough to get the majority of it, and they'd need 10 or 12 Republicans to impeach him and get him kicked out. So if they were going to do that, I think they'd go the full impeachment. The best possible result for everybody involved is if Donald Trump chokes on a filet of fish double, which I had this weekend, fucking excellent. Filet of fish double and some fries, falls over, shits himself, embarrasses himself on TV, and he's dead as a doornail. That was going to be the best turnout for everybody. Nobody
I was
gets hurt.
I was looking for impeachment. Like, okay, if they were going to do something, that's what they would do. But, when I was listening to the kids, they had a good point to where they were saying, well, they want him out. They can see where this is going. You know what I mean? They want him out, but at the same time, they want to hold on to the base. So would it be easier to sell them impeachment, or would it be easier for them to sell 25th Amendment and blame it on health issues? Like we can
I
all
think
see
it's,
health
I
issues,
think
and maybe that could be a way where they could skirt the impeachment system. Is use his
to a
health
lot of,
issue 25th.
to a lot of these people, he's the Messiah. I don't know that it makes a difference whether he's sick or whether, if they're going to get rid of him, they're going to take some heat for it. I think
Mm-hmm.
Eric and I have talked about this before. If there is going to be an impeachment, say for some crazy shit, which ironically is there's a lot of crazy shit. If they were going to impeach him, it wouldn't be till after the 2026 election and they get decimated. The Republicans get decimated. Then he has no political uh, assets anymore, and they'd get rid of him at that point. At this point, between now and 2026, they don't know if Donald Trump is a benefit or a liability. I mean, we do, but they're so stupid they don't know. I don't think they do something like that until after 2026. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I've said it before. I think unless things get really bad with his health, where it is obvious even to them that they need to do something for the good of the nation or the good of their party or their political power, because they care about that more than the nation or the people or anything like that.
Yeah.
They might end up pulling a 25th Amendment ahead of time. I don't think they would impeach him before the 2026 midterms. But I've said before, if they get decimated in the midterms and there's a bunch of members of Congress that don't have seats coming up, you know, because what no, we have midterms in November, new Congress starts January 3rd. That would be going into 27. There's a 2 month window there where there could be a bunch of Republicans that don't have seats coming up in January where they have nothing to lose. And for the good of their own party, they may say, this guy's political capital is gone. Let's remove him. We have 2 years to rehabilitate JD Vance, get him up and going into the 2028 general, because we need to do something or Democrats will be in control like they were in 2020 or 2021 after the 2020 election. I could see them doing that, and then all the ones that vote with Democrats would be the ones that don't have seats coming up. Because, like I said, they have nothing to lose at that point.
Right. From my understanding, when I was looking at the 25th Amendment with them, is so like, let's say they did an indefinite 25th Amendment. Because Vance would be acting president, he's not automatically the president, even if Trump is gone. That would have to be someone that was approved through the Congress. Is that right? Because I was thinking if they did that, and they saw that Trump is gone. They know nobody likes JD. He's creepy as heck, right? So would that give them an opportunity to put maybe somebody who can kind of like sane wash them a little bit, like a Brian Kemp or somebody in that slot, if they went the 25th Amendment way instead of the impeachment way?
No,
I've
what
said
they could
before,
do.
I've said before what I think is what they should do if Donald Trump did keel over, JD becomes the vice president. Um, they bring in somebody like Brian Kemp, who's a little more normal, make him vice president, and then impeach JD Vance because he's nobody likes the fucker. And now you've got a normal candidate going into 2028 who can run again.
Yeah,
That's
they would
just my
have
thought.
to. They would have to. I agree with that. They would have to get rid of JD somehow, because if you kept somebody like Kemp in a VP slot, that stink from JD is gonna like wash off all over Kemp. So
Yeah.
whoever they had being a VP to JD Vance would have to know that this is temporary. After that, I need to go back into my hole, because anybody who is a VP under Vance, their career is over. I don't even see Kemp signing up for something like that. I don't even think he has more sense than to do something like that.
Well,
I think he
okay,
plans to
couple
run for
things.
president, though.
Yeah, but not after JD. You see what they did with Biden and Kamala, and Biden wasn't even a bad president, but they held her to account for everything that they didn't like about Biden. I could
Yeah,
tell
that's
you right
true.
now, Newsom's and the Pritzkers, everybody would completely like, hey, you were right there with JD Vance. You were standing right behind him. You signed off on this. You agreed to that. You're just as bad as he is. You just don't sound as crazy. There's no
Go
way
ahead,
he would be
Eric.
able to recover from that. Mm-mm.
Okay, well, a couple things. I don't know how it would work if they indefinitely use the 25th Amendment, where Donald Trump could come back at any point saying, I'm healthy, I'm back in charge. I don't know if JD would be allowed to pick his own VP at that point with, again, two-thirds consent of both chambers of Congress. Now, so I don't know if he would even have a VP if they do it indefinite. Now, if they remove him and say, you are just out, you can't come back because of
Mm-hmm.
your health, um, he would get to pick his own VP. And it is going to be, you mentioned Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp would be a good choice. He's not objectionable. And you would get Democrats on board, I think, for a Brian Kemp confirmation. Now, whether they would impeach JD Vance, remove him, and throw in somebody else, that is potentially what could happen. But depending on how the midterms go, they may only have a small window where they're in control of both chambers. They would need Democrats. And if Democrats think they're only doing it to put a more credible candidate in for 28, that wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
I
good
think they
point.
would block it
Probably.
because they see what's going on. Uh,
Good
but
point.
you have all of that going on. That is very complicated. But JD would get to pick his own VP, and I say it a lot. I'm gonna say it again for those people that are worried. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson would not get promoted to VP. The
No.
only way he moves up in the chain of command is if they remove Donald Trump because of whatever, whether it's impeachment, 25th, he chokes on a Big Mac, whatever happens, Donald Trump is gone, and something also happens to JD Vance. That is the only way he gets anywhere close to the presidency. Same with our senator, Chuck Grassley, 92-year-old Chuck Grassley, who says he's going to run again in 28. Um, the only way he comes anywhere close, even though he's third in line, is something would happen to Trump, something would have to happen to Vance, and something would have to happen to Mike Johnson before Vance or Johnson got to pick their own VP and confirm them through Congress. So it's a long shot that anybody down the chain becomes president. They only have it there as a way of saying definitively, this is what happens.
Yeah. I want to move on to the other topic, the big one with the press conference. I just want to say this: we're talking about Donald Trump's cognitive ability, whether he's viable or not. My wife and I spent the day babysitting my 3-month-old grandchild, my new grandson, and I was making a comparison between that 6 hours I spent with my grandson and that last press conference with Donald Trump. And here's what I discovered: this 3-month-old made more sense in the ramblings he made. He drooled less and he didn't shit his pants. So, as far as I'm concerned, my 3-month-old grandson's better equipped to be president of the United States at this point, other than Donald Trump. That's a
I,
sad state of affairs when a full grown man shits his pants more than the 3-month-old kid.
I
No
had a
argument
feeling that's
there.
where you were going, but yes, it is a sad state of affairs, and this whole administration is ridiculous. They're propping him up because they haven't seen anybody have this amount of sway over the general public
Right.
before. Republicans were struggling with being popular because their decisions are bad. I mean, look at George W. Bush, gets us into two 20-year long wars and crashes the housing market under his watch and doesn't really fix it. Obama had to fix it. Um, and then, the answer that they had, the best candidate that everybody thought going into the primaries in 2016 who was going to take it, according to the pundits, was Jeb Bush.
Right.
That, oh yeah, they're going to run Bush again. He's got it walking away. Then Donald Trump shows up on the scene and he's popular. and he's, doing things that nobody's done for the Republican Party since Reagan. So they want to hold on to him as long as possible, but they're propping up this old man who has health concerns, wears a diaper, um, and should be in a retirement facility, probably, maybe in a memory care unit, not running the country.
Definitely not. And, when we talk about the impeachment possibilities, there's shit he did today that could cause him to be impeached.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that later. The big news, of course, was the press conference. Now, 6 weeks ago, everybody was talking about the Jeffrey Epstein files. Mike Johnson, being a pussy ass bitch, said, you know what? Let's take a vacation for 6 weeks. Maybe people will forget about it. And some people in the comments said, yeah, we're not talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And I said, just wait till Congress comes back. We'll whip this shit up again real quickly. And of course, Congress is back in session as of Tuesday, and things are pretty hot and heavy. Now, on Wednesday, we had this press conference on the Capitol steps with all the survivors from the Jeffrey Epstein thing. I mean, they said there might have been as many as 100 there, but it was very compelling what these women did and what they talked about, and it said a lot about this country because we know Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were convicted and went to prison. They went to prison for sex trafficking. But in order to sex traffic, you've got to traffic these fucking girls to somebody who's also committing crimes, but we've never heard of any investigations. We've never heard of any prosecutions of those people. They have been protected. But when we're watching this on television, somebody goes to Donald Trump and says, what do you think about this? And he says, oh, it's a big Democratic hoax. That is not only a lie, that is absolutely insulting to these women, girls at the time, and all they've gone through. That tells me Donald Trump is flailing now, because is that the best answer you can have? He's terrified at this point because he's losing control, I think. What do you think, Old Soul?
I think he doesn't have the ability to come up with something new. You know what I mean? Like, he just uses the same thing over and over and over again, and that's always worked for him. So he's resorting back to what he knows or what he thinks will work for him. If Democrats were the ones who were pushing and pushing and pushing this, yeah, then he could say it was a Democrat hoax. But it's been his base for years at this point, pushing and pushing, being on the front
And he
line.
started it.
He appointed people when they supported his appointments because they were going to release those files. So how could you call it a Democrat hoax when it's your base? So his inability to come up with new material is going to be his undoing in this situation because it doesn't apply to this situation. If he was saying this is a Republican hoax, that would make more sense than saying it's a Democrat hoax. That would make far
Yeah.
more sense. And then you have to look at the fact that it's layered. If the economy was booming and everybody was happy and had money in their pockets, Republicans would not care. But it's like, this is just one more lie on top of the rest of the lies, on top of my groceries going up, on top of everything else that he is not following through on. And I think this one thing gives them the ability to, I don't know, kind of put them on their high horse a little bit and kind of justify their anger because they're not going to blame him for everything else. But it seems like this is the problem that they could allow themselves to try to hold him accountable for. And I think he's missing that whole entire point. They don't care about these women, him or his base. It's just everything is like, this is kind of like that straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And he's missing that point. He's also ignoring his base because they are the primary aggressors when it comes to wanting those files released. When he's saying it's Democrats' fault, and they're looking at him like, no, we want this information. It's not Democrats, we want this. And he's completely ignoring them. He don't care about them, but that ability to kind of be in tune with MAGA, to know what they're thinking, to be able to articulate in the dumbest way how they're feeling and what they want, he doesn't have that ability to do that anymore. And so that's going to be his undoing, blaming Democrats for something that his base wants. Basically
Yeah.
saying, hey, you guys are a hoax. And
Eric, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, he's going back to saying it's a Democrat hoax, but they want the files, the Republicans want the files released. We've covered that. And I've said
Mm-hmm.
it before, I'll say it again. One of the reasons why the Republicans and his base desperately want it released is they have been told for so long all of these vile things about Democrats. They are convinced the only people who could be on the list is Democrats. And that's why they want them released. They are convinced you're going to find out that it was Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Soros, and anybody else that you can think of out of the Democratic Party, that they're all part of this, all the big names. And now that Donald Trump is fighting so hard to keep the files from seeing the light of day, and he's saying it's a hoax, it's a hoax, it's a hoax, they're confused. The Republicans aren't buying it because they want their proof against the Democrats. And now it seems like Donald Trump is saying, well, you can't have the proof that the only proof that's there is anything that was planted by Democrats to make me look bad, to make Republicans look bad. They can't reconcile that because they have been told for so long all of the bad things about Democrats. And now that it's bipartisan, they're pushing out to get the files released publicly. What they are releasing, more information is coming out. I don't know if you guys saw it. Out of the 33,000 plus pages that have already been seen or released, most of the stuff was already out in the public eye already.
Yeah.
And there have
Yep.
been people digging through it, and they found stuff that they didn't know, even out of stuff that was already made public. Like Prince Andrew knew Jeffrey Epstein or was friends with him 10 years longer than what he claimed in one of his interviews. There's as this information is getting dug through with a fine-tooth comb, it's going to be so bad for Donald Trump. He doesn't know how to twist away from this. So all he can do is go back to what worked with the Russia investigation. It worked into everything else. It just say it's a hoax. His base will believe it. And now that they're not believing it, he's terrified because he doesn't know what else to work, and he's confused between the dementia and this always working. He doesn't have a backup plan. He doesn't have a plan B because he's not that bright.
I
You
just want
know
to
what,
remind
Eric? What
folks.
you said was a good
Hold on one
point.
second. I just want to remind folks about the hoax things. The Donald Trump said COVID was a hoax. 1 million people died. Donald Trump said Russia was a hoax. Yet his campaign manager went to jail for collaborating with Russia. He continually calls things hoaxes. He's proven wrong, and he still goes back and calls them hoaxes. When are we going to get tired of listening to the boy who cried wolf, that everything's a hoax and every woman's a liar? I mean, even the dumbest people have to say, what the fuck here? Go ahead, old soul.
I've been sick of listening to that fool. But I think that Eric has a good point where he says that Republicans were so like hell bent on it being just Democrats in there, and they just want to prove everything about George Soros and everything else, because it puts Trump into a corner where you're either hiding the files because you're in them and you're protecting yourself, or you're protecting your billionaire buddies, or you're protecting all of these Democrats that you told us were in these files. So you're telling us it's George Soros and a bunch of Democrats in these files, nothing but Hollywood elites. Like, that's what you told us. But now you're not releasing the files and you're protecting them. If it's not that, you're protecting yourself. And if it's not that, you're protecting your buddies, right? Those are his only three reasons for protecting those files. And even MAGA knows that. And none of those options are good options for him. So Eric was 100% right when he said, like, his demonization of the Democrat Party as a whole is what's coming back to bite him in the butt when you think about the Epstein situation.
You know how you can confuse Republicans. I've been watching it. You know, the ones that still think the Democrats are the only people on the Epstein files, that's fine. You can't convince them otherwise. But when the
Yeah.
Democrats keep saying, release the files, I'll get some come to me, or they'll go to somebody else and they'll say, well, you know, Bill Clinton's on the list. You know, this Democrat's on the list. And then when we have the audacity to say, we don't care, bust them too. They don't know how to respond
Mm-hmm.
to that because their relationship to Donald Trump is one of worship. And we're ready to throw anybody in jail, if it was fucking Mother Teresa for that matter, on that list. So they don't know how to deal with that, and they're trying to use that as an argument to shut us up, and it's not working. And all their arguments are at a point where they're not working anymore. So not only Donald Trump, but the base, the Trumplifucks, they're a little confused right now, not only by Donald Trump's behavior, but why the Democrats want so badly this to be revealed. Everybody's confused on the right.
Yeah, that, but that's they're the morality police, the thought police,
Yeah.
these people are bad, these people are evil. We're all principled and we all stand on principle. Well, except for when it's Donald Trump, or except for when, we're all states' rights issue, except for when our guy wants to militarize our cities. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
their morals and values that they claim to have, it's just like it's a mirror that's being like shown back up on them, like, no, you don't believe any of this doesn't matter. And I think that once they realize one thing, like that door is open and you can kind of see them seeing other things for what it is, except for outside of this reality that they've been living in for I don't know how long. And I think that's something that I miss a lot of times. Like they don't live in the same reality that I live into. They live in a completely different reality. And it only takes a small crack for them to start to see through the crap that they've been believing all of this time.
I got to think that the Republicans, Eric, are seeing one of the cracks by Donald Trump doing what he did today or yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this. As they're getting closer to try to get this, I forgot what they call it, the the the
Discharge
the bill
petition. If
that
you're talking about,
the
if you're talking
discharge
about,
posi-
yeah, to
yeah,
release the files.
discharge petition. Yeah. Donald Trump said today that anybody in the Republican Party that signs on that discharge to get it voted on by the full House is acting hostile toward the Republican Party. Now, we know the Republicans want to see this stuff. The Democrats want to see this stuff. There's compelling evidence all over the fucking place. When Donald Trump says, no, you can't look at that. And if you look at that, we're going to be mad at you. That's got to expose some cracks in Donald Trump's game here.
Yeah,
That
you're
goes
not
right.
just going against the administration, you are hostile towards Donald Trump. Like wanting to have justice for these women, wanting the people who were actually engaging in this crap, you want to hold them accountable. That's being hostile towards Donald Trump. What does that tell you? I saw Alex Jones have I don't know if you pay attention to him like that, but he had a complete freak out because one of his top talents left his organization. And the reason that he gave, in the most respectful way possible, I never hear MAGA people be disrespectful, but he was respectful to Alex Jones and his platform and what he did for him. But what he was saying is he kept getting pushed to cover Trump in like a more flattering way, but that's not reality. He is saying we can look at Trump and we can see that he is sick. We know something's going on with him. We know he's cognitively messed up right now. And on top of that, look at what he's doing when it comes to these Epstein files. And now this is like a protege of Alex Jones. He went to prison for Alex Jones, right?
Yeah.
And even he is saying, well, he is covering up these files. And if Alex Jones or anybody else want me to stand on their network and do that, I am going to quit. Now, if you have to think that that has a ripple effect and it's splitting MAGA, like even the diehard MAGAs can see this. And these people are dumb as rocks. But like it's so blatant and it's so out in the open, you can't ignore it. You can't possibly ignore it unless you agree with that type of behavior.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Which
Eric.
some,
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what I was just saying. They have been told for so long it is nothing but Democrats on the Epstein files. Then Donald Trump comes out and says, well, you're going to be hostile to the administration if you vote to release the information. It's cracking MAGA because they don't know what to think. You got Donald Trump on one hand saying, well, you're hostile to me and this isn't what we want, but they want to see it because they want the proof that Democrats are evil. And this is cracking that facade. And it doesn't take much to crack the hold that they're holding. Now, my folks were never really Trump supporters, but they did vote for Donald Trump twice until 2024 when it came out and they were talking about cutting Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. That was a big enough crack for them to say, wait a minute, you're screwing me over here. I can't side with you. Now, they were never full-blown MAGA, but
Yeah.
they could see the writing on the wall and go, okay, that's a bridge too far for me. The other MAGAs, this is their bridge too far. They want all the files against the Democrats to prove that they were right. And they think that if they get all the files released, it's going to end the Democratic Party, that they'll have super majorities like they do in Texas, but on the federal level for a decade or 2 decades or whatever. It'll be the good old days, and they can push all their stuff through and make things as 1950s as they want. And they're confused because Donald Trump seems to be, like we've said, either protecting Democrats or that he's protecting himself, and they don't understand why he would be protecting himself. So he must be protecting Democrats, and they can't comprehend what's really going on.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, so I want to ask you this. I'll ask you both this. Um, Donald Trump has been very adept at diverting, distracting, delaying, and getting himself out of trouble. This one thing he's having a very difficult time. And having this press conference on the Capitol steps is obviously driving him nuts. Still, I'm still convinced that as long as Donald Trump is president, they will never release the Epstein files. And I'm kind of okay with that, as you know, because it just makes it worse for Donald Trump and Republicans. However, there is some leverage being applied and some pressure being applied, because one of those survivors said, I've been talking to the other survivors. We can make a fucking list. We can create the list. We know who was involved. So that's making people nervous. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene comes out and says, I know you're probably afraid to reveal the list once you make that list, but I'm telling you right now, dumb as fuck as I am, meaning Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'll read that fucking list on the House floor. So whether or not that actually happens, they got to be freaking the fuck out. You got people that have nothing to lose, and they're ready to reveal the shit that these people are desperately trying to hide.
You know, that six-toed little heifer, she's more political savvy than what I initially thought.
Well, she's
I
still
don't think,
stupid. If you heard her
yeah,
talk,
I
she
think that
uses
she,
words incorrectly. She's not bright.
yeah, but I think that she kind of have like street instincts, and you kind of have to be that type of way when you're dealing with people like MAGA. And she has her ear to the ground when it comes to MAGA. She knows what they say. She knows what they want. She knows what they're demanding. I saw her say that the phone call in her office like has been off the hook when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. And she's like, this is what they care about. So I'm going to address it. I'm not going to try to cover it up or hide it or run from it. I'm going to address it because I need to keep my seat so I can keep getting this black money, right? So I think that's where she's coming from. And I got to be honest with you, I think that she would absolutely do it. I think that she would do it with no hesitation. She's one of these people that she will blow up everybody. She's not loyal to anybody. She will blow up anybody around her if she can maintain her seat and stay in power. And I think that's what she's doing right now. And I don't think she would hesitate to do it. I really don't. And I'm actually rooting for her. Like, go ahead, girl, do it. I want her to do it. But I think she will do it. And then people who say that they can't trust the list or whatever, they have to understand so many people have seen this list. If they are leaving off names or not saying names, attorneys have seen this list, Congress, the FBI, the DOJ, all of these people have seen this information. They know the names that are on there. So it's not like some secret little black book that only a handful of people have seen. It's so many people that have seen this. It's kind of like I just kind of compare it to like when you were younger and you were threatened, like when you come home, you're gonna get a whooping because you messed up in school or whatever. And you're just like dreading going home. So you walking slow, you dragging your feet, you doing all this other kind of stuff to avoid what's gonna happen. When common
Yeah.
sense will tell you just go ahead, go home and get it over with. And I think that's what Trump and this administration is doing. They know it's going to happen, but they are just dragging it on for as long as they possibly can. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is that type of person that's like, nope, let's just go ahead, deal with it, get it out the way so we can move on to talking about the midterms or whatever other wacky ideas she got floating around in her head. That's what I
Look,
think.
I've said this before. Everybody thinks this is just about Donald Trump,
It's
this
not.
list of names. Um, there's a lot of wealthy, powerful people on this list. Donald Trump is not the only one pushing back. Donald Trump is only the only person we see pushing back because he's president. Um, but how dangerous is it for these survivors or Marjorie Taylor Greene to start revealing this list? I mean, it's going to turn everything fucking upside down. People that may be loved by society, people in Hollywood, people in music, people in corporate America. There's a lot of people with
Princess.
a lot of money and a lot of power could fuck some things up and put people in dangerous situations. We've seen people, well, Epstein.
Yeah, I think you have a good point with that because one of the things that people kept saying after the press conference is, why don't they say names? They say names, they say names. But this is not the first time that these women have spoken. If you go back and you read the transcripts from the from Maxwell's trial when they testified, this is not the first time them telling their story. This is the first time that enough people care to hear about it. So you can go back and read transcripts and see what happened to these women and understand how it's so disgusting that Donald Trump is protecting her in a prison camp, right? Part
Right.
of the reason that they can't name people is because these are very, very powerful people. They can sue these women into being homeless. They could target their children's schools. Like these children are not walking down the street by themselves. They're walking down the street with their children, with their spouses, with their parents, with their siblings. You know, it's not just them. So in order
Yeah.
to go up against these type of people, you have to use Congress in order to do that because Congress is Congress. They're not walking down the street. They don't have to worry about that type of retaliation. They have security. They are protected. They have closed door hearings. They can have certain names and details like completely blacked out from records when it comes to votes that they don't have to disclose to the public. These are the type of people who can do it and not feel that threat of being targeted. But they want these women to take those targets. When to this day they continue to get death threats, they still continue to unalive themselves. Their families have to deal with this. You know what I mean? So it's like, why are you putting all of this burden on the victims and the perpetrators? They just get to throw their money and their weight around and get away with this crap. Absolutely not. Congress needs to be releasing those names. Donald Trump and his administration needs to be releasing those names and let them deal with what comes with that. Not these victims. They've already been through enough. So people who are talking about these names, shut up. Because if you haven't been in these women's shoes, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Congress, that's what they're there for, and they're supposed to be getting justice. If the Republicans are talking about sex trafficking and all of this other kind of crap, then this is their opportunity to step up to the plate and care about sex trafficking like they say that they do. Put your vote where your mouth is, period.
Eric, what's your
Sorry.
thought on it?
Well, it is right. Old Soul's right. We need to release the stuff through Congress. It gives it a lot more credibility. Um, and beyond that, something I was sitting here thinking about with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She comes out and says she give her the list, she'll read it on the House floor. Well, that's not surprising. Marjorie Taylor Greene puts a lot of things on the House floor. Look what she did to Hunter Biden. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think
Dick pics on the house floor. That was so
right.
first.
Hey,
Um,
hey,
but
hey, decorum, everyone, decorum.
but but here's something I was thinking about with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, I think she's actually one of the politically smarter Republicans right now. And not that she's
That's
smart,
sad.
but because she's not, but she sees the writing on the wall. She sees a path past Donald Trump, and she knows his political time is coming to an end, and they are going to have to move away from him and away from MAGA. And she has been slowly working toward that. You know, she came out a while back during this administration and made comments on one of the, I think it was on Tucker Carlson, about people being war hawkish and giving money to Israel to promote war or something like that. But it was, I don't remember the exact comment, but she sounded almost normal and sane. She's
Right.
trying to already rebrand herself away from MAGA somewhat. Uh, and maybe she's not planning this term, but I think she's looking toward at some point like an open Georgia seat or running for the Republican nomination for something big statewide in Georgia. And she knows she's got to get away from the MAGA base. And now this may be her moment toward credibility where she backs up the Epstein victims, reads the
Mhm.
list on the House floor, and does this kind of stuff and openly defies this administration. They say, well, you back the measure, you're hostile to the Trump administration. What are they going to say if she reads the names of all the client list on the House floor? Are they going to say she's hostile? Probably,
Yeah. Yeah, she's
but
looking for publicity, no question about it. Let me
she's
just say
looking
this though.
ahead.
Let me just say this though. What Old Soul says, well, if somebody comes out, they could get sued into oblivion or they might get threatened. But I think they've already figured that out because instead of one person, one person here speaking out or this other person speaking out, they got at least 100 people speaking out all at once. They've got the attention of the media. They've got the attention of Congress. They've got members of Congress speaking for them and fighting for them.
Yeah.
Once those names are let out, the cow's out of the barn. You can sue them all you want, but there's so many fucking people to sue. They're doing it the right way. They're coming at them in mass,
Mm-hmm.
changing the narrative in the public eye. Once the public eye sees, okay, this guy does that, it's done for him or her. It's done. They can sue all they want, but again, the cow's out of the barn. So I think they're going about this the right way with large numbers of people and getting the vast majority of people on their side by telling their stories.
Yeah, there are safety in numbers. Not only that, but it's also I've found this to be with the girls that have been in my home that are in our WhatsApp group that we have. Um, just to be surrounded by people who, I can say, I empathize with you and I'm so sorry that you went through that. That's not your fault. You didn't deserve that. You need to blame the adults for that situation. But when you have other people like Kelsey and other girls in the group that can actually talk to you and back you up, and they have similar experiences, they know what you went through, that makes a huge difference. And it kind of like makes them more strong because they don't feel like they're by themselves and they can't
Right.
honestly say to themselves, nobody else knows what I'm going through when you have all of these other girls that's with you. In addition to that, I don't think Trump realized this, and I don't think a lot of other people realize this, but a lot of those women, this was like their first time meeting each
Right.
other and talking to each other and sharing that type of information. They had just kind of been spread out and going through their own things. But when you put them together, safety in numbers, but at the same time, safety with the information that they have. You know what I mean? Like when she said, oh, we could come with our own list. Like we know who was with where and with whom because we're together now and we're talking and we're sharing information. That stuff, they hadn't done that before, except for a handful of them. Even the last victim that unalived herself, her brother is like picked up that cause and is like running with it. Like my sister's not here to talk for herself anymore. Now you're gonna have to hear my mouth. You know what I mean? And that also makes a difference too because it humanizes them more. They have family, they have friends, they have siblings that's going to continue to push for them no matter what happens here. So I don't even think they understand just these women getting together is a huge deal, but them sharing information is even a bigger deal. And this was something that I don't think the administration planned on. But
No.
that right there by itself is huge for them to share information like that. Very, very huge.
Well, the other thing to consider too is this is now all of a sudden high profile. If one
Yeah.
of those people decide to sue, if a big name person decides to sue one or two of those women
Hmm.
because it's high profile, I'll guarantee you the baddest lawyer in the country will do it pro bono for the publicity. So
Absolutely.
good luck trying. You can't sue them into oblivion because they're going to have people coming to their aid by virtue of publicity or GoFundMe or whatever. They're going to
Hmm.
have the support to do what they need to do. So that's what I mean. The cow's out of the barn and somebody's been exposed. They can threaten all these things, but can they really do anything? What do you think, Eric?
Well, you're right. When the information gets out, it doesn't matter entirely what ends up being decided in court. Even if they would be successful in suing these women into oblivion,
Right.
the accusation is out there. And the number of people who will believe the accusation, given that it was made in this setting, that with the numbers and the fact that it's high profile right now and everything, even if they win the court case, is more than I think the people who would side with the you know the person who was accused of being on the client list. So the court of public opinion is going to play a huge role in this. Beyond that, when you're talking about defamation or libel, which libel is just written defamation,
Right.
that those two things, the defense to that in court, to where you don't owe any money, is the truth. And if they can prove that these people were involved in the Epstein stuff, that they went to the island or they did stuff with the girls, etc. If they're telling the truth, they're not going to get sued into oblivion, because that's the only defense there is to that kind of a lawsuit. And
Right.
you're right. GoFundMe's and the best lawyers are going to be stepping up to take these cases, especially if you're going up against somebody very, very wealthy, say, a
Or
Hollywood elite,
famous.
or somebody who has got money or whatever. They're going to want to go up and say, okay, I was the one who proved in court that this person was connected to Epstein. It's all about, they're going to be doing it for the publicity, the high profileness of this case.
They're going to be
You know,
whining about
Eric,
the cancel culture. They're going to be whining about the cancel culture. And there was a case that goes back to the 1930s. I saw a documentary on it, and I knew this story anyway. 1930s, there was a very famous actor, a comedic actor by the name of Fatty Arbuckle. He was a big fat guy, and he was funny, and everybody loved him. He was probably the hottest actor in the country in silent films and all this stuff. Well, he was out partying one night at his house, and there was a woman that was there, and the claim was that he went in a back room with the woman, raped her, and she ended up dying. Well, it turns out she had some other issues with drugs and other things. He was acquitted of that crime, yet never worked again. So that's what
mm,
these people have to worry about. Once it's out the door, it doesn't matter if you prove you were innocent or not. And that's what these people have to be fearful of.
not only that, but this is just kind of like, with Donald Trump being on the scene and making a complete joke out of everything. A lot of people aren't thinking about it, but the salaciousness of it. Like
Oh yeah.
people who weren't paying attention, people who really didn't care, whatever. Like it's at a point now where they want to know like who is in there. You know what I mean? Like I was I was like doom scrolling one day and it was somebody who was just like had a whole live going on with a bunch of people in the live and everybody is engaging in this live and they were all just saying like who their top 10 were that were in the file and they were just throwing around all kinds of names and it's just kind of like it's to the point to where people it's not like we need to know who's in that file because we need to get justice for these women, but you have a bunch of messy people that's like, oh, girl, who is in that file? Who do you think in that file? Like you are attracting those type of people as well who just really don't care, but they are here for the drama. They want to know who is in it. They want like that. I don't know, and that speculation that's going on around it. It shouldn't be like that. We should be, more concerned about the victims, but unfortunately, that's not how society works. And so you kind of have like all sides coming together, whether it's for justice or whether it's just, I just need to know who in them files. like all of them coming together with that same common goal of who the heck is in these files, and we need to see those files, regardless of the reason. Everybody wants to see them.
Yeah, this isn't going to end now. It's going to heat up. It's going to build up. There's going to be other events with other survivors, so it's going to be interesting to see. I want to bring something else up. The talk of, we've been talking about tariffs for some time and how badly it's screwing up the economy. It was taken to a federal judge, and the federal judge said that the vast majorities are unconstitutional. Now, he didn't make them stop the tariffs. Uh, he can continue with the tariffs until they decide to appeal them. I just got notice on my phone. Donald Trump and the Trump administration has appealed that tariff decision to the Supreme Court. So now we're going to see what the Supreme Court does in this particular situation. Uh, Constitution's pretty clear. It should be an easy thing for them. Will they accept the case? And if they accept the case, will they go with rule of law or will they side with Donald Trump? Fact of the matter is, we don't even fucking know. But these tariffs are hanging in the balance, and Donald Trump is freaking out about that too. That's the only thing he knows how to do economically is put on tariffs. But you know what the big problem with those tariffs are? He's ranting or raving about the $200 billion we got from tariffs, which he got from us, not from the Chinese or any other foreign countries. Here's the thing. If the Supreme Court says, yeah, that's unconstitutional, got to give the money back. That's why the stock market was going down a little bit. They're going, oh shit, we're going to have to give back $200 billion or whatever it was. And so now we're going to get it to the Supreme Court. Any ideas what you're thinking on that, Eric? Do you think the Supreme Court's going to fuck that up too?
Well, with this particular Supreme Court, you can never underestimate how bad they could fuck up a decision.
True.
However, if you look at the appellate decision, it is pretty cut and dry. They point to wording specific in the Constitution. They point to the specific wording in the law as it's written, that it never mentions the word tariff or any synonym of the word tariff. And they are very clear to do that. And I think the appellate court did that on purpose. They wrote a very concise decision for this Supreme Court to look at and go, we don't even have to touch this. We're not going to take that. We're just not going to take it and let the lower court ruling stand. Now they could also take it up, drag out a decision, maybe not give us a decision till next June and let things be up in the air between here and there. But ultimately, based on what I know about this court and how they like to rule, and they're very particular, specifically people like Alito and Thomas, they like to look at specific wording. I don't want to say definitively 100% that they are going to side against Donald Trump because, like I said, you never know what this Supreme Court will do. But I'm going to find it very hard for them to twist this in a way that Donald Trump does have the authority to put these tariffs on. And that is bad news for Donald Trump and the economy.
Could they just delay coming up with a decision or deciding whether or not to take it so the tariffs stay in place and give Donald Trump a longer time to keep these tariffs going? Couldn't they say, well, we'll get to it in February?
Well, it depends. Depends on what because right now I believe it is next month in October by the court's ruling as it sits right now, the ruling where they're illegal and he can't put them on and they all have to go back to what they were ahead of him becoming president, would be taking effect. Now, they could take the case and say, well, we're going to schedule oral arguments for February or for March, and we're going to stay the lower court's ruling until we have oral arguments. But they could also say, well, we're going to take the case, we're going to hear oral arguments, schedule it for March, but we're going to let the lower court's ruling go into effect in no more tariffs. But they could also stay part of it and say, well, lower court ruling goes into effect, no new tariffs going forward. They go back to what they were, but we're not going to rule on the money yet. And you can hold that for now until we figure out what to do. There are so many ways they could do this until they make a decision. Now, the easiest thing for them to do would say, well, we looked at the lower court's decision. Yeah, they got it right. We're not taking the case and move on. And
That
that
would be
would
the smart thing
screw
to
this
do.
administration. But when you got people like this Supreme Court with Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, you just don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to want to try to, reinterpret the Constitution, even though it's pretty clear that it says Congress has the ability to lay duties or tariffs on things that come in? It's a Congress authority. Even the statute that granted the president some authority to do that on an emergency basis never used the word tariff. And an emergency basis does not mean permanent. He can't just say, well, it's an emergency and leave them on for 4 years. So there are so many ways they can look at this, but they are going to have to tie themselves into knots to side with Donald Trump on this one.
Well, they have done that in the past, a la Roe v. Wade and that sort of stuff. So it's hard to have any confidence as to what they're going to do with the situation. Something else I want to bring up. I know you guys have some input about this, especially you old soul. Uh, I'm talking about that shithole state called Florida. Florida is going through some things now where they're ending all mandatory vaccination. so so there'll be new hats out there that make America have polio again. That's what they're going to be wearing down in Florida. What are your thoughts about that whole Florida situation, old soul? I know it's probably pissing you off.
It's disgusting.
It
It's so
is.
disgusting. When I look at a lot of the stuff that they're doing, um, like I think about it sometimes and I hesitate to say it out loud because that's how disgusting it is. However, I feel like these are the type of people that would be on that type of demon time. And when I
Yeah.
look at a lot of the stuff that they're doing and that they are promoting, I think about population control. I really do. When I look at them trying to roll us back 100 years, as if we don't have a global economy. It's just us and a couple people we cool and we'll trade with, and we don't need anybody else. Like they completely want to cut us out of the global economy, right? And the
Right.
only way to do that would be to isolate ourselves where it's just us, or you may have, the top 5, 10 families who hoard all the money, and the rest of us are pretty much just poor and doing their bidding for them. Like they are saying that that is when America was great again, and that's the golden age, and that's what they want to take us back to. But there's no way that we can get back to there with the population that we have right now. So I do think that they want a lot of disease and famine to run rampant. And a lot of them say like it'll separate the weak from the strong, or however they want to word it. But when I see stuff like this, I think population control, and I think that they are starting with our children. Like our children are not going to be able to fight off a lot of this stuff that's coming. I'm in Vegas. Somebody died from the plague in Arizona. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's like,
Right.
I think that they want this to spread and they want this to happen. And then outside of population control, I think that they want people desperate. If you want your son or your daughter to get this or get that, you're going to have to do X, Y, Z for us to allow that to happen. We see Donald Trump is not above extorting, like how he treats other nations. You know what? If you don't want to give me a private jet, I'll put that 50% tariff on you. If you don't want to give me this, you don't want to nominate me for this, I'll put a 50% tariff on you or 60% tariff on you. And I think that is going to start trickling down to the American people. If you want your child to be vaccinated, this is what you're going to have to do in order for that to happen. And I think the more widespread that it is, the more children that get sick, the more parents are going to be desperate, and the more they're going to be willing to give up in order to protect their children. Right now, I think that they're saying, oh, well, we don't have mandates because parents' rights or whatever, right?
Right.
But we know that's not true because If you're a parent and you have a transgender child, then you don't have any rights. They get to tell you what you can and can't do when it comes to your child's care, right? But when it
Right.
comes to vaccines, it's parents' rights. And it's not mandated. So if you want to get your children vaccinated, you can. But if you can't, hey, you don't have to. But I think that that's going to change over time. And it's going to be okay, well, certain vaccines we're going to ban that we're not going to allow. And then that's going to keep getting that list of banned vaccines is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just blows my mind that anybody with a child that gives a damn about their kids are okay with this. It just
So
blows my mind. But one thing I will say, Ron DeSantis, the attorney general, RFK Jr., Trump, every single one of these bastards are fully vaccinated, their children are fully vaccinated, and their grandchildren are fully vaccinated. Why the
yeah,
hell do you think that is?
yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, I wanted to ask you this because I need more information about it. We've been talking about COVID, and all of this starts at the top with RFK Jr. There's 1,000 healthcare professionals that signed a petition that said he should be fired, and I'm hoping at some point down the road he will be fired. He's fucking around with the CDC. The people they even appointed are quitting. Um,
Boom, did you see the response to that though? Those thousand people that signed on to that letter?
no,
Response to that was those thousand people, well, we could just fire them. I don't know if you've seen that, but that was the response to that letter. But go ahead.
yeah, I don't know if they could fire them all because they don't work for the federal government necessarily. I think they're talking about people in individual hospitals, and they may fire them anyway because we'll be losing hospitals. The thing with COVID, though, I'm interested in, they took off the restrictions, or they took on, well, I don't know if they took off mandatory stuff. If if you to get a COVID vaccination, you got to be 65, you got to have some illness that may be susceptible to having problems with COVID. So I'm 65, I have type 2 diabetes. I'll get the COVID vaccination. My wife will get the COVID vaccination. But my sons, they're healthy, they're not elderly. Um, is it that they can't get the vaccination, or is it that they have to pay for the vaccination now as opposed to getting it free?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it is that they can still get it. It is just not covered like it was before. It's not free like it was before. But I could be wrong on that. I'm not 100% sure. But on this vaccination and removing the mandates and stuff, it's going to be temporary because Democrats are going to probably take control of Florida here soon. DeSantis
Yeah.
is unpopular. What they're doing has been unpopular. Um, and Democrats keep overperforming in Florida in special elections. I think they're going to take back control of Florida for a little bit. They'll at least flip it purple for a while. And Donald Trump and RFK Jr. will be out at at some point, and we'll have normalcy back in, and we'll go back to believing in the science. Um, but it's funny, you hear some of these anti-vax Republican, these MAGAs, will say things in comments. Well, I don't want vaccines. We just need to develop a way to inject a weakened version of the virus into people to make it so that they've already got it. And, you know, then they'll already have a natural immunity built up to it.
Or
That's
herd
what a
immunity.
vaccine is. But
That's what they thought with
they,
COVID too. But COVID morphs into other things. That's why you can't do it that way.
I just
right.
texted something, and I can't say that on the air,
Can
but
I?
yeah, but that was from today, and that is a pretty big. I can't say it on the air because of my job, but what I will say is when it comes to the vaccine, there are some pretty big providers who are already saying, you know what, we're just not going to offer it. We're
Can
just
I
not.
say it? Can I say it
Um,
without them tying it back to you?
no.
No.
Um, I'll figure out a way to be able to. I'll figure out a way to be able to
Well, suffice to say this,
warn people,
I
but I
won't
will.
mention this, but
Yeah,
I
I
know
will
what.
say there are some pretty big providers right now who have said we're just not going to offer it, period. Our
Right.
doctors, nobody's just going to offer it because of there are certain money and funds that can be pulled, certain grants and stuff that can be pulled from hospitals, clinics, and stuff like that, to where if they are giving people the COVID vaccine, they're going to pull their funding. So you have to think about it. If the government is telling a hospital in rural America that if you give people the COVID vaccine, we're going to pull your funding. What do you
And
think
this
the hospital?
this this shouldn't be surprising to anybody either, based on what Donald Trump and the Republican Party has
I'll
done.
figure out I'll figure out a way to get that message out. But
Well, just suffice to say that there are some places in this country that aren't going to provide the or make available the COVID vaccination because
yeah,
they're afraid of the ramifications from the federal government. That's not
right.
surprising given we
Yeah.
went through the same bullshit with IVF. We've gone through the same bullshit with Roe v. Wade, the Dodge
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's how Donald Trump does business. If you do something I don't like, give you another example. He went after Harvard. He said, I'm going to pull your $2.6 billion in funding because you're too woke or you're doing this or you're racist or whatever.
Yeah.
You should note that the federal judge today came back and said, yeah, you can't do that. Give them the fucking money back. I mean, that's how all these are going to go. Ultimately, it's a time in between, and people are terrified that they're going to lose money or lose their hospitals, whether it be for Roe v. Wade or whether it be for COVID or IVF and all this shit. And, we're getting companies or hospitals that are a little more vulnerable because, like you say, they might be in the middle of nowhere in rural, and it's not going to take much to cause them to shut down. So that's why the fear is there.
Yeah, it'll be like so when I say that I think that right now it's an option, and then I think there's going to be a list of banned vaccines. I think that that's coming. And then I think that that list of banned vaccines is going to expand. And as far as when it comes to funding, it's going to be if you give this particular vaccine, we're going to pull your funding. And you're going to see
Yeah,
hospitals and you're going to see clinics afraid to vaccinate children. And this is just the COVID vaccine goes hand in hand with vaccines that they don't approve of. And
um,
even though they'll be like, while it's being appealed and it's working its way through the legal process, there's going to be people who are going to die from that. And there's going to be children who are going to die in that interim. And I think that
absolutely.
people are not ready for that, but they need to prepare themselves for that, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, there's one other. We're getting toward the end, and there's one other story I wanted to bring up. We were talking about the possible impeachment of Donald Trump, and some people will say, "What could he get impeached for?" Well, he did
What
something
can
on
you?
Wednesday. He did something on Wednesday that he could very well get impeached for, and I'm curious as to what you guys think about this. He's got this hard on for Venezuela. He had boats down by Venezuela because they do drugs and they're sending drugs. On Wednesday, they targeted a boat, not a big boat, not like a battleship, a boat. I think it had a fucking outboard motor on it, even. And they claimed that this boat had drugs on it and there were gang members on it. Okay. So they flew a plane over or something, or probably a plane, and they bombed it with a missile. Now, we don't know if they're telling the truth. They're telling us that they're only throwing out gang members for deportation. That's absolute bullshit. We know that. So he just sent a plane over. They sent a missile down, blew up this boat, killed 11 people, and um, supposedly stopped these drug runners. Well, let's first say we're not in America when he did that. Uh, we have no idea for sure. There was no due process to decide whether these were actually drug runners and they had drugs. We know Donald Trump's all about performance and looking tough. So he thought, I'm going to go bomb the boat and everybody will think I'm great and they'll forget about Epstein. Well, none of that is true. But Eric, isn't what he did by doing that, mm, whether or not it's a crime in this country doesn't matter with his immunity and all that stuff. Isn't that an international crime? something he has no
I
power over?
I do believe so because just running drugs by itself is not a capital offense. It is
Right.
not even if they were on U.S. soil, that is not something we give the death penalty for. But here you have somebody unilaterally. Now they may say, well, they shot at us or whatever. Now maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't know.
Did you see this
Uh,
boat? It's not a big boat.
well, and I haven't heard that they had guns or did anything that to provoke a response. But they may try to say that that's what happened is they provoked a response, so we sunk them. But you carried out a capital sentence, a death sentence on these people with no due process, no trial, no evidence for something that wouldn't be a capital crime in this country. Very much could be an international law violation, and Donald Trump could end up with charges from the International Criminal Court. Now, Donald Trump doesn't care about that, but if Republicans are looking for a way to get rid of Donald Trump and fix things going into the midterms into 28, he may end up his ego may be the thing that gives it to him if he continues to violate international law. I believe they surely could use this as um, an impeachable offense. I mean, they impeached Bill Clinton over perjury and whether or not he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky. So
But
this is 10
but
times worse than that.
the international crimes don't stop there. He bombs a boat out in the middle of the ocean near Venezuela. He also sent spies up to Greenland to try to convince people to side with the Trump administration and become part of the United States. That's fucking espionage, and that has international implications too.
Yeah, I mean, he gives them stuff on a daily basis almost that they could use when it comes time and they are ready to pull that trigger. I am 100% convinced that he is probably going to get impeached with and removed. It's not going to be one of the simple, well, he needs 51% or 50 plus one in the House and 67% of the Senate. It's going to be like 60 to 70% of the House and probably 70 plus to 80% of the Senate. Like when they finally make that decision, I think it's going to be a huge number of Republicans making that move.
Yeah. It seems like old soul that this guy is just going, as they say, hog wild. I mean, he's not even thinking about ramifications. Maybe he realizes he's going to die and doesn't give a shit, and he's just doing whatever he's going to do. But he is running roughshod on this country, and he's doing some pretty egregious stuff that not even the dumbest criminal would do.
Yeah, people don't understand either when it comes to trafficking. They traffic guns, drugs, and people,
Yeah,
children. You know what I mean? So we don't know if everybody on that boat participated in whatever crime that Donald Trump is accusing them of. Um, and I saw people asking, like, where's the Coast Guard? Where's the Coast Guard? Um, their funding has been cut and they've been reassigned. They're
right.
doing other things now. Um, they're not taking down human traffickers or drug traffickers or any of that. That's not what they're doing now. They're out there going to Home Depot and helping ICE round up people going to work or
Or picking
round
up
up people for
garbage.
immigration hearings or what they're doing now a lot of is what, well, where I'm from, we call it doubling back. So ICE will go to a home, they'll arrest the people in there, and then take them to the ICE detention center, go back to the house and rob them. So they're doing a lot of this doubling back stuff. So while ICE is, doubling back, you have our Homeland Security, you have our Coast Guard, and all of these other people out in the streets and helping with these stupid patrols instead of actually being on the waters and catching the smugglers of human beings, of drugs, and of guns. They're not there to do that anymore. And so when people ask Trump, like, hey, so you don't have the Coast Guard out here catching these traffickers, what are you going to do? And his answer to that question is, well, we'll just blow up any boat that we see in international water or whether it's on American soil. We'll just start blowing up boats and people. And people forget that he wanted to do this during his first administration, but he was told no, he can't do that. And he understood that if he did do that, he was going to be held accountable. He doesn't
Well, it
have
makes you
anybody around him right now to tell him no. So he gets to do everything right now that he wanted to do the first time. So he's doing it. He's going ham right now.
well, these things should concern people because he's just going willy nilly, sending
Yeah.
a multi-hundred-billion-dollar plane to shoot a tens of millions of dollar missile at a fucking rowboat. That's what he's doing. You want to talk about waste? That's fine. But like you say, he's got nobody to stop him. If he's willing to do that, maybe he's willing to go back to his past suggestions. And
Yeah.
you got a protest. Let's just shoot him in the lakes.
Yeah.
If no one's there to stop him, that's conceivable. That could happen.
Definitely could happen. I don't know if you saw that. I'm trying to think of what it was. I don't know if it was like Newsweek or something, but they had this big ICE recruitment job fair. And I believe it was in Texas. And according to the article, it looked like something, like back in the day when they were like, Uncle Sam wants you to join the army, and they would have these big, huge recruitment operations and people would sign up. So they were
Yeah.
catching people as they were coming out of signing up to be a part of ICE. And a number one thing that these rejects were saying was, oh, well, you know what? I should have joined the military like my brother did, or I want to serve my country. I want to be able to protect my country. They're not looking at this as like this is ICE. In their minds, oh, this is like the military. They get to be G.I. Joe. They get to put on their vest and go around and terrorize people. These are the people that's signing up for ICE right now. These are not people who are talking about immigration and criminals or anything like that. They're like, I wished I would have joined the military 30 years ago, and here's my chance. Like, that's how they are looking at this. And these are not the best of the best. There's a lot of requirements, like physicals, age requirements, different things that came along with being an ICE officer that they're just completely removing all of those criteria. Keep in mind, you have Kristi Noem talking about they just turned down 130,000 applications. If you had to do that, why are you having a recruitment job fair going on? Why are you offering these crazy bonuses? Why are you reducing the requirements? Because you're not getting the most qualified applicants. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And those are the people that you're getting. And even with those people, you have to beg them to do it. The only people that got hired like right then and there is if you was like in a certain age group and you were recently discharged from the military for whatever reason. Then it's like, okay, you don't have to go through all of these other steps. Here's your paperwork. Go do your drug test. You're hired. But everybody else, they at least had to go through like a second step process or whatever. But these are not the best of the best. Like, this is going to get really, really bad. And I don't think
Well,
people are prepared for that at all.
but I have a question that you're qualified to answer. You were in Los Angeles with the ICE folks out there. You were picked up and put in a detention facility.
Yeah.
Kristi Noem, Botox bitch Barbie. Um, she said something. She said, well, thank God ICE and the National Guard was there because if they weren't there, Los Angeles wouldn't even exist anymore. What's your thoughts on that comment?
She lying her ass off. Like, that's all she's doing. That's all. Like, we just brought our kids back from DC, and I would like to see ICE go into red states, and it's not because they need to see how horrific it is and stuff like that, because I don't think they care. But I think that they need to feel it
Right.
when your community completely changes. When you go to the playground and there's literally no children outside. When your favorite restaurant up the street is boarded up. You know what I mean? Like, they need to feel the despair in the air. I guess that the best way that I could describe it. Like, a couple of our kids were like crying, like, what the heck is this? Like, there's tanks on the street. People are scared. There's nobody out here.
Yeah.
There's certain restaurants that I used to go to all the time in DC that you're like, dang, I hope I can get a reservation there. No, you can just walk in now and just get a table. You can feel like the fear and the tension in the air. And it's not like angering, it's just really, really sad. Like somebody just came into a city and just completely sucked the life out of it. The same thing with the arts, just sucking the life out of it. Like the Kennedy Center, you just completely
Yeah.
just sucked the life out of everything. The Rose Garden, you put concrete over it. Like that
Yeah.
is what he's going to states and doing. He's just killing it. The life, the vibrancy, the different cultures and smells and people that kept communities alive is completely gone now. And I think that you can't tell rural America or deep red areas this. You can't show that to them on television, but once they feel the change in their communities, I think that is something that could make a difference to them. And that's kind of like why I'm like, yeah, these red states, they need to go into these states. I think that people will be angry, but I do think normal people will be just like more saddened and heartbroken. Like, this
Yeah.
is my country. There's a tank outside. This is like my country, and like there's no kids out here laughing and playing. Like, even people on the farms, their immigrants are like vibrant, happy people. You know what I mean? Like, they come to work, like, hey, try this tortilla dish that my wife made last night. Try this, try that. They're like dancing and singing. They got the music going while they're out there working, and just like to completely see that gone, dead, not there anymore. You feel that. Like, you don't have to see it. Like, you could just like literally like feel it. And it's so sad and depressing. And I don't think blue states need to be the only states that feels this. They
We
are
might
the
have
main
some.
people that voted for this. They need to feel this crap too.
Yeah, we may have something to remedy that situation. But first, I want to ask Eric, the threat of them going into Chicago, the ICE and maybe National Guard from some other state. Um, I'd even heard that they're making some movements to go there. Your thoughts, are they going into Chicago? And how might that shake out once they get there?
Oh, I have no idea what'll happen. I don't think they're going to get the reaction that they want. First of all, well, I think what this administration is hoping for is some kind of a violent reaction to them being there, so they can justify being there.
Yeah.
Um, but beyond that, uh, did you see we had a decision out of the lawsuit with Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump over his use of the National Guard? And first time that they have looked at use of National Guard for law enforcement pretty much in the history of this country. Um, and now this ruling only applies to California, but said that there is not a legal availability for Donald Trump to use the National Guard for law enforcement purposes, etc. What Donald Trump did in LA was illegal by sending in the Guard. Where this applies with Chicago is, I think Pritzker and his attorney general and the city of Chicago, their mayor, I think they're all getting ready. If Donald Trump does try to do this the same way they did with LA or DC, they're going to sue. And that judge, whoever gets that case, is going to look at this case and go, this is the only precedent I have. It's going to be a lot quicker to come to a decision now that they have a precedent to look at. And it's going to be, nope, you got to get him out of here. Return the Guard to the control of Pritzker. And once they do, um, it's going to be uh, harder for the Guard to continue to follow the orders because they will have been deemed illegal by a court.
Right. Well, Old Soul brought up the red states, and I've said the same thing. They go into red states. They may welcome them in, but once they get there, they may be sorry what they asked for. Now, Donald Trump was trying to couch what he was doing with Chicago for a time, and he said, well, if they invite us in, if they beg us to come, we will come. And Pritzker very specifically said, don't come. We don't want you here. However, I just heard today that there is a mayor of Shreveport, Louisiana, Said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
Donnie, we'd love your help." This is interesting because that's Mike Johnson's home state, hometown for that matter. So they're asking for Donald Trump to come in with the National Guard. And I suspect he'll do it because he was invited in and he can show them how great a job he can do. Can you imagine what's going to happen when the National Guard's walking down the streets of Shreveport and people's family and friends and businesses are going to be taken away? I don't think they're going to
Well,
like it as much in the red state as people might think.
no, but the citizens, like the MAGA people in these red states, so like you seem like Gavin Newsom, and this is crazy. Like our kids were debating PragerU kids, right?
Yeah,
And if you see all the trolling that Newsom does, however, there's a lot of facts in there. And so
yeah,
one of our kids, like on her phone, she had like a bunch of Gavin Newsom screenshots with the crime rates in each one of these states. It was crazy. Like she didn't have to look nothing up. She just had to take screenshots. But there, so because so many people have been saying like, hey, the crime rate is higher in Arkansas, in Alabama, in Louisiana. Like the top, like 8 out of the top 10 worst crime ridden states are Republican. Why is Trump not going into these red states? And so I have been seeing, and I was even seeing this with the PragerU kids in DC, was like, hey, yeah, these red states, we need the help of the National Guard. We need the help of the military. Why is he only trying to help out the blue states? Why is he only helping them out? We need his help too. There are MAGA people wanting this. They're saying, like, yep, this street is unsafe. There was another kid there, I want to say Tennessee, because he was like in Memphis. Yeah, Memphis, Tennessee. And he was just like, yeah, there's all these black gangs down there and this and that. Why aren't they in Tennessee? Why are they in California? We need his help in our red
right.
states. So they are really like, there's kind of like this behind the scene movement with MAGA that they want the military to come and clean up the streets that they deem is like crime ridden in their own states and cities. They want this and they're asking for it. But the administration so far, they have been able to get away with it because there hasn't been any like public officials, like no governors, no mayors, nobody asking. It's just been like the base in these states that's asking for it. But now that you have like, oh crap, there's like a mayor, a governor asking for Trump to come here. Now we get to see if he listens to them and be like, oh, you want the military there? Let's go. We'll see if he's going to do it. But this administration already knows what happens when you start to send in the military into these cities. They know what happens and they're hesitating on doing it. But I do think that movement is like getting more momentum. And I think
Yeah,
whether he wants to or not, eventually he's going to have to do it because MAGA is looking at it as he's prioritizing blue states. He's cleaning up their crime. Why is he here cleaning up our crime? Look at Gavin Newsom throwing it in our faces. Every time we turn around, he's talking about how crime ridden our states is. Come in here and get these criminals out of our. We want the criminals gone too. Like
yeah.
that's what these
Well,
idiots are saying. And I really do want him to go into these states so that they can actually, for themselves, feel what that's like to have a militarized state, a militarized city, to see people who you think are the good ones being carted off, seeing them getting robbed. Like ICE is doubling back. The first thing they do is go for electronics. Go in there, take your TVs off your wall. Like this is
Yeah.
the type of stuff that they're doing. And legacy media isn't going to talk about it. We're talking about it right now, but we all know that MAGA, they're not going to believe us. They think we're being
Absolutely.
hyperbolic or some crap. I don't know.
Eric, we're going to wrap it up here, but give us your take on what we were just talking about.
well, yeah, I think red states do need to start feeling the effects, but there's some irony in all of this. And that being, they're saying, hey, we need the National Guard to come fix our our cities, our crime-ridden cities, this and that. At least it's coming out of the base, not coming out of the red administrations of those states.
Mm-hmm.
But they're saying we need help. We need the federal government help, but they don't want any federal government assistance. They don't like handouts, is what they say. But red states are taker states almost exclusively. They take more federal money than they kick into the coffers. and they have been read in a lot of cases for generations, and they see how bad it is around them, and somehow they are able to convince themselves that it's federal Democrats' fault that their local community, that their state, etc., are horrible. It's mind-boggling about what it is, and now they want a handout from the federal government to come fix the problem that they voted in by voting for Republicans.
Right.
It makes no
Like,
sense.
how do your state have a supermajority of Republicans for like decades, but somehow it's a transgender athlete in California that is like the bane of your existence? It is insane that, or if you live in a state where you don't even, you've never experienced the border, but for somehow the border is like the number one issue that you're voting on. I think
Yeah.
that they are going to, I
Happens
think
here.
some of them are seeing that a supermajority in a deep red state for decades, at some point you kind of have to switch it up on the local level, and you can't continue to blame Democrats for that. And the crazy part about it is what makes them see that is not the local level policies, it's the fact that you have a Republican administration, you have a Republican Senate and a Republican House, so there literally are no Democrats to blame. They would
Right.
blame Democrats in the federal government if we have power in either of those chambers. But since we don't, they have no choice but to blame Republicans. Is, you know what? You have way too much common sense and logic, and apparently I do too. That's way over my pay. How their mind go there, I will never know.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank Eric and Old Soul for coming over. Eric, tell people how to get a hold of you on TikTok, YouTube, and such.
The two places I'm primarily at is TikTok and YouTube. I am Analytical Iowan on both. I have it spelt down below my name down here. If you find me on either one, I have a link tree that will take you to the other, and some other places where I do have some content, but I'm mostly behind on getting stuff put up there. So trying to navigate having time to get stuff posted everywhere is a little bit tricky. But those are the two places you primarily can find me, YouTube and TikTok, Analytical Iowan.
And if you don't follow Eric already, come on. If you don't follow him already, I'm going to have Debbie and Old Soul's brother call you out specifically. So fucking get on
Yes.
it.
And you can find me on the Rational Boomer podcast.
There you go. There you go. And on the lives from time to time. You're both on the lives too. I want to thank you both for joining me. I knew this was going to be a good show, uh, and it was. I know the people will appreciate it, and it'll be a good listen and hopefully informative to a lot of folks. Those listening, thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.